Hey everyone, this is Brian from ActiveMelody.com. Well, I'm going to show you how to play that note for note in this lesson series. So this is on filler licks. This was a suggestion from one of the site members. Somebody sent me an email last week asking if I could show how to play filler licks in between chords, and I thought that would make for a great lesson. So we got four basic chords. We got a G chord, a D chord, an E minor chord, and a C chord. All played down in first position, really simple chords. But the focus of this lesson will be on how to play those filler licks in between the chords. So I've split this lesson into two parts. In this first part, we're going to take a look at the first half of what I played. I played through it twice. If you want to learn the second half as well as download the tablature, you're going to want to go to ActiveMelody.com and look for EP054. That's the lesson number for this lesson. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with this first part. Now, what I like to do in these lessons is I always like to give you the context as to why the notes that we're playing work. I think that's the real value, to be honest. It's not really memorizing the notes. There's some value in that. Obviously, in the beginning, you kind of have to memorize just to start somewhere, and then you can start to walk on your own. But I think what you really want to get out of a lesson like this is to be able to take your own chords and apply your own filler licks in between them. I think that if you can get to that point, even if they're very basic and simple, that's when you know that you're really starting to get this and it's starting to kind of sink in. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That's where you want to go, I think. It's not just copying. If you do want a slow walkthrough without me doing a lot of talking, which I tend to do, I like to break it down. I think it's just important. I do have a slow walkthrough. It's what it's called. So go to ActiveMelody.com and look for EP054 and look for the slow walkthrough. Now you do need to be a premium member to have access to that, but they are available now in all lessons going forward. Okay. So the first thing I did was I started with a G chord, and I strummed it a few times, and then stopped the chord. So I went down, down, stop. And the reason that I stopped it was obviously so I could play the lick. So it's, if I had two guitar players, one guitar player would probably just keep playing that. With some kind of strum pattern like that, and then then you could play lead on top of that. But when you're just playing by yourself, you don't have that luxury, so you kind of have to jump back and forth between the rhythm and lead. And you'll see me do this in a lot of lessons. If you like this style, by the way, I have lots and lots of lessons like this at Active Melody. These seem to be the most popular, and I think it's because a lot of people are just playing at home. They don't have a band, they don't have another musician to jam along with, which is pretty common. So okay, so after we play the G chord, I'm going to assume you know how to make a G chord. Then I stop it, and I do that just by taking the palm of my hand here, muting the strings, and then I play this little lick that goes. Now let me show you how to play that, and then I'll explain where it comes from, so you can apply this to any chord. It's actually really common. And it's very easy to find this little harmony thing. And what you're doing is you're harmonizing with yourself. So you're playing two notes. It sounds like two, well, not two guitar players, but it could be, I suppose. Definitely two single notes. So I'm starting here with my middle finger on the 5th fret, 3rd string. And then I take my ring finger and I put it down on the 5th fret, 1st string. So I'm straddling, so I'm not playing on the 2nd string there, but I'm playing on those two. That's where I start this. Now I take my pick here and I pick the 3rd string. As soon as I pick that 3rd string, I go ahead and slide both of these guys up 2 frets, like that. You can see, so after I slide it up, then I take my ring finger on my right hand and I pluck that 1 string like that. So you can see I pick this string, then I pluck this string. Now some of you, that's called hybrid picking, when you're using a pick and then you're using your fingers. Some of you like to do that, I know, and some of you don't. You don't have to use hybrid pick. You could use a pick for both. You could do a downstroke and then an upstroke. if you want. So you have options. But anyway, that's the first thing that I do. Then I come back here and play here where we started, so back on the 5th fret. Again, it's the 1 and the 3 string. Now when I did that, I played both strings at the same time. That's where you're going to have to hybrid pick. So I'm doing the pluck with my ring finger and the pick with my pick, like this. Let me see, I'm doing both of those at the same time. It may be kind of awkward at first, and some of you like to hold your pick like this. I know that that's actually not the proper way to hold a pick. So even if you're holding your pick like this, your ring finger is still free. But just try and hold your pick between your pointer finger and your thumb. That's really the proper way to do it. And then try and pluck both of those at the same time. And then we come down and play this. Now the pattern changes here. My pointer finger goes down to the 3rd fret, 1st string, but my middle finger goes to the 4th fret. I'm sorry, the 1st fret, 3rd fret, 1st string. Did I say that? For my pointer finger. My middle finger goes to the 4th fret, 3rd string, like that. And so we changed the shape from this shape to this shape. We're still on strings 1 and 3. We've just kind of reshifted how we're fretting it. Now, if you want to think about, just to visualize kind of where we're at here, when we're playing, and I go over this in a lot of lessons, but when we're playing in the key of G, and in this case we started with a G chord, the 3rd fret is your root fret, right? So if you were at a bar chord, you'd make a bar here on the 3rd fret. Well, when you think of this shape, that's just the top 2 notes of that bar chord. See? That's all you're doing there. So that's really, if you think of it, it's just the beginnings of a G chord. So, all right, so the timing goes like this. Let me do it again. 1, 2, 3. Here's my foot. Okay, so now that you can hear kind of the timing and you've got the notes, let me explain where those notes are coming from. Now, I always think of these as the Brown-Eyed Girl licks. I mean, if you're familiar with that song by Van Morrison, you know, what he's doing, or whoever's playing the guitar, I guess it's him, he's doing this little harmony thing. So I think that's really where that came from. And when I played that, it's kind of the reverse of it. But whenever you're at the root fret, which I explained just a minute ago, so when you're playing these 2 notes, you can just think of those as coming out of the root fret. So now you've got kind of, if you think about what you've just learned there, now you can take that same theory. So if you're playing an A, for example, you could do this. Because do you get that? That would be your bar chord. So you're just playing those 2 notes out of that. So now that you know where those 2 notes are, you know where these 2 are as well, in reference to these. So you can just see your middle finger slides up 1 fret, and then your ring finger goes down here, and then your middle finger slides up 2 frets. Now that you've got that, you've got this little thing that you can do. If you're in A, so if we're in G, you can do that. Now you can always go back to that little riff, so it doesn't matter if you're playing down the key of E. It gives you these options that you can use that as a filler, and that's really handy. It's a great little filler trick to use. So that's where that comes from, and hopefully the whole root fret thing as a home base allows you to visualize, oh, okay, so now no matter what chord I'm in, if I'm playing a D chord, you know, your root would be up here, so it would look like this. And you could find how to do it, you know, at lower points in the neck if you wanted to try and match those notes somewhere else. But that gives you an idea for that. All right, so then the next thing that I played was a D chord. And I use this little filler. And let me explain first how to play that, and then second I'll show you where that one comes from, so you can apply that to your your stuff as well. Okay, so the first thing I did was play the D chord. Now you could play it down here if you wanted to just play first position D. I know in the intro I said everything was, all the chords were first position. Actually, not the D chord. It's easier for me to play that here since the little riff is here. But all I'm doing for that is I'm barring the 5th fret, and then I use my pinky. Now I know that this is not the way most people do it, but I bar the first 4 strings on the 7th fret with my pinky. And I only play the middle 4 strings, so 5, 4, 3, and 2. Now, the proper way I think to do that is with your ring finger, like that. But that never worked for me for some reason. I've always just used my pinky for that. So anyway, that's just how I make that chord. But that's the D chord. If we're playing it up here, you can see it's the same chord. Now, after that, I went. And let me show you what I'm doing there. It may sound complicated, but it's really pretty simple. I'm starting by barring the first 3 strings on the 7th fret, but I'm only going to play strings 2 and 3, and I'm going to use my pick for that. Then I'm going to hammer on with my middle finger goes down on the 8th fret 2nd string, and my ring finger goes down on the 9th fret 3rd string. So that it looks like that. Okay, so you can see that this just stays down the whole time. And now after I play that, I actually just slide it up. I slide those up 2 frets like that. So when I get to this point, my middle finger is on the 10th fret 2nd string, and my ring finger is on the 11th fret 3rd string. So they're in the same shape, they've just slid up 2 frets. Then I bring them back down to where they were just prior to, so back down 2 frets. So we have, okay, so practice that first, just try to get that. Now notice that I'm only picking that once. Now if we were playing this slow, so if it was slow chords, I would do the hammer on, but I might actually pick those notes apart. It just depends on how slow it was, but the tempo I was playing it made sense to just use the slides for that. So again, hammer on, slide up, slide back down, only picking it once the first time. Now, after that, then I went. So again, it's just that same hammer on, which we just did. Then I'm going to play just strings 2 and 3 on the 7th fret. Ring finger comes up to the 9th fret, over to the 9th fret 4th string to play that note. Like that. And that's how you're going to want to practice that, is just going. Okay, so let's get that D part. Just over and over again until it starts to work for you. You can see what I'm doing for the rhythm as I'm going down, up, stop. Down, up, stop. So it's down, up, stop. Down, up, stop. So we have the G part, the D part. Alright, so let me explain where these little licks come from for this D chord. Now, this is the way I think of major chords. So you can play a major chord 2 different ways. There's actually lots of different ways, but 2 main ways. This is how I think of it. So you have a bar chord, so here's a G chord, for example. So the bar chord goes down here, or the bar goes down on the 3rd fret and plays across all 6 strings, right? Well, then if you can also make a G chord like this. Now I'm only playing those middle 4 strings, 5, 4, 3, and 2. But look what I'm doing. I'm barring the 10th fret with my pointer finger, and I'm putting my pinky down here on the 12th fret, only going to the first 4 strings. Well, that's the same thing I did when I made this D chord, right? So that D chord is the same as this D chord, although it's impossible to do because I don't have a cutaway, but that's where it would be. So the proper bar, I guess, bar chord for a D would be up here. But you can also play it here. So I just showed you the G one as an example. There's 2 different places that you can do the G, and that goes for every chord. So the A would be down here. Obviously the nut becomes your finger. So that's kind of, if you think of that shape we're doing with a D, it's the same shape for the A down here. Or you can make an A bar chord like this. Now the reason I'm explaining all that, there's a purpose. So so when you get to this version of a major chord, so if you're playing a D chord, for example, you have this really convenient way to play the major scale or the major pentatonic scales right beside this chord. So where my pinky goes down, if I were to just take it off and then put my pointer finger there, what I essentially have is every note here on this fret, right where my pinky was, becomes kind of the root fret for the major pentatonic scale. So see, notice my pointer finger is going down on every one of those, right? And that's the major pentatonic scale. Now, obviously with a major scale, there's a few extra notes, like that one, and that one. And it's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. I explained that last week. It's just convenient that this happens to be right here where the chord is. So you can just switch over and you can play that little thing that we played because those notes are part of that major pentatonic scale, which is right here next to where your pinky was. The reason I'm mentioning all of this is so that if you're playing an A chord down here in first position, what would you do? You could use that same little riffs, or licks down here, and you could do it for a C chord if you're playing a C chord here. You've just got some options now, and you just sort of know how to get to them based on this version of the major chord as opposed to this one. So when we started with the G chord, we have the Brown-Eyed Girl stuff, right? Which is cool because that works over any major chord played like this. If you're playing this version of the chord, you've got that little set of licks. So now you can apply that. You start to apply that to whatever it is that you're playing. So if you're ever playing a D chord, you have no excuse not to come up here and go. And you've got a couple other options which I'll get into at some point. But anyway, at least this part of the lick, you know where that's coming from, right? Okay. Hopefully that's interesting to most of you. That was very eye-opening to me when I discovered that, because it really can enhance your playing. If you're wanting to jam along with somebody, these are the kinds of licks that can really, make you sound like you know what you're doing. Okay, so we have the G chord, the D chord, and then we get to the E minor chord. And what I did for that was so both of these first 2 chords were played in major scale. Very happy. Right? But then you get to the E minor. The chord itself sounds kind of sad because it's a minor chord. So I decided to go to the minor pentatonic scale at this point. It would not make sense if I played the major scale. If I went. just doesn't match, right? So since we're playing a minor chord, anytime you're playing a minor chord, you will want to play that minor pentatonic scale. So what I did was I went, and if you look at where I'm at, this will help you visualize it. So E minor chord, the E minor pentatonic scale, think of the nut as your root fret, right? So we're down here. So think of that being my pointer finger. Right, so that would be where your minor pentatonic. So that's how you can get all your real bluesy stuff now that you kind of know. So all that's coming from pattern 1. And since this is already being fretted for you, so to speak, because of the nut, it allows you to do things that you couldn't do if you had to fret it yourself, or it would be more difficult to do. So what I did was I went like this. Now I slid from the, and I'll explain where this is coming from too, but I started on the 2nd fret 3rd string with my middle finger, and I slid up to the 4th fret 3rd string. Pointer finger goes down on the 3rd fret 2nd string. So I'm playing strings 3, 2, and 1. 3, 2, 1. Now that 1 is the open E string, or the open 1 string. So after I play that open 1 string, I come back and play the 2 string, or the 2nd string, keeping my fingers in place there, just like that. And then I take my middle finger and watch this. I'll go. So I'm just gonna, with my middle finger, I'm gonna start here on the 4th fret 3rd string, slide down to the 2nd fret 3rd string, play the open 3rd string. Then I'm going to play the 4th fret, the 2nd fret 4th string, again with my middle finger. So, and then I'm going to take my finger off the fretboard to play the open 4th string. And the picking pattern is just down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. And when your finger comes off the fretboard like that, it makes it very easy to jump into place to play that final chord, which is the C, right? So where these notes are coming from, these E minor notes, again, I mentioned it's the minor pentatonic scale. And if you think of this being pattern 1, this would be pattern 2 right here. So look at this. This is these. When we did this, we slid right into pattern 2 with that open string, actually, which would be technically be pattern 1. So at least you know where that's kind of coming from. You can visualize the minor pentatonic scale. Most of what we did being pattern 1, but when we slid into pattern 2. And the patterns are all referenced in the Blues Lead course at Active Melody for premium members. All right, so let's back up and we'll put all the pieces together up to this point and play right up to the E minor chord. So here we go. We have the G. We'll start with the G. And then we come to the C chord, which goes like this. Now that's pretty simple to do. It's just a C chord, which I'm going to assume you know how to do. I start by playing the 5th fret, the 5th string, which is fretted here on the 3rd fret. The bottom note there of the C chord. It's actually the C note. And just picking that, and then I'm going to come and I'm going to take my middle finger off on the 4th fret or 4th string, play the open 4th string, so my middle finger comes off the fretboard, and then I hammer it back on. So everything else stays. So my pointer finger stays down, my ring finger stays down, my middle finger comes off the fretboard, and then hammers on, just like that. And I use that all the time when I'm playing a C chord. You can get some real nice stuff. Okay, so let's from the E minor it goes. And so the timing of it, so after I do the hammer on, I just go ahead and complete the C chord. Just like that. And then I just came up and, sort of to conclude the C part, I went. And so I started with my ring finger on the 5th fret 5th string, and I slid up to the 7th fret 5th string. Then I take my pointer finger and I go ahead and bar the first 4 strings on the 5th fret, but I'm only going to play strings 4 and 3. Those middle 2 strings. So, and I'll show you why these notes are working. Then I come back and play the 5th fret 7th fret 5th string. And then I come up here and do this hammer on. So I play the strings 4 and 3 fretted here on the 5th fret, but I hammer on to the 7th fret 4th string, just like that. And it gives it a little bit of a country feel. So, then you're right back in position to jump into the G part. So, what this is, remember what I showed you with the D chord, remember? We had, so let's go ahead and assume, since we're playing the C chord, remember? This is the way to make that version of the C chord, right? Or the way to play it up at a higher point in the neck, just like we were doing with the D chord. So now we know, so one of the things I could have done was I could have went just like I did with the D part, and that would have worked and sounded great. But the other thing but what I ended up doing was this little riff. But in reference, you can see what's happening is when I go ahead and push down with my, bar those first 4 strings there on the 5th fret, that's really covering the same ground that this finger would cover if you were playing the C chord like this. See, I've just shifted up. So again, it's part of that major pentatonic scale. That's where that's coming from. So that's just another little trick that you can remember anytime you're playing this type of chord, major chord. You could do it for the D. And I always kind of think of that as the Wind Cries Mary chord from Hendrix, when he would play he would play these versions of that same chord. So if if he was starting on the D, for example, he would come up here and go and play it like that. So that's really what's happening when I play that C chord. So you can just remember that in reference to where you are with a chord. So if you're ever playing another chord, doesn't matter if it's an A. It just gives you some interesting ways to kind of fill in the dead space. So okay, hopefully that's been helpful. Let me go ahead and I'll play through everything a little bit slower than I did in the intro, so you have this as a reference. So here we go. I'll do it again. So that's really the intro to the first part. Now the second part, I had some different variations on that. So you have some other ways, some even more licks that you can work in. And there's lots and lots of these types of filler licks, and they really do enhance your playing and can make it a lot more fun to play rhythm and lead, and even play along just to play by yourself like this. It can make it sound a lot better than just strumming chords.